Hello students. Today I'm back with another topic which is of great interest, and sometimes it is misused by students. Generally, some students get confused in the use of different kinds of comparison. So we're going to be flashing that out. This topic will find place in the state board syllabus, the ICSE syllabus, as well as the CBSE syllabus in the earlier classes, in the 7th and 8th, and when you go on into the 9th, you would be requiring knowledge of it when you do your editing and omission, when you're doing in the 9th and 10th. So let's start. Now, when we look at the topic transformation of sentences, there are a number of kinds of transformations which we actually need to learn about so that we can perfect our grammar. The first is when we got sentences, I'm quite sure you're knowledgeable about the kinds of sentences. You have positive sentences, you have negative sentences. Like if I say, I am short, that is a positive sentence because it does not have any no, never, etc. But if I say the same sentence, I'm not tall, it means the same thing, but I've introduced a not, so that's become negative. But my topic today is not positive to negative. Similarly, you have assertive to interrogative. You are well aware of the four kinds of sentences. You have assertive, interrogative, exclamatory, and imperative. So you have ways in which you can transform that. Then you have to add a question tag, like it is raining outside. If someone says this and it wants to put it forward as a question, but not as a regular question. He just wants to tag it at the end. So he would say, it is raining outside, isn't it? So that would be a question tag. But again, we're not going to be doing that also. The topic of interest for today is to change degrees of comparison, and so transformation of sentences, degrees of comparison. And where does degrees of comparison actually come in? We are talking about degrees of adjectives, and what kind of adjectives? Obviously, you cannot transform uh, an adjective of number like 1 into oneer or 2 or 3. One will remain 1. We are talking here mainly about degrees of quality adjectives. Adjectives of quality like thin, bad, good, fat, beautiful. So they can be transformed into a comparative by saying, like suppose I say, you're describing a quality of a noun, that's an adjective of a quality. Tall boy, beautiful lady, good speech. So all these are describing some quality of the noun related to it, and so they become adjectives of quality. Now, when we are talking about degrees of comparison, there are three ways in which a statement can be written using the adjective of quality. One is using the positive degree, one is using the comparative degree, and one is using the superlative degree. Now, just delve slightly deeper into what exactly you mean by positive, comparative, and superlative before we actually talk about the transformation. So, positive, we are going to be using the root form of that adjective. Like, suppose I spoke about tall, I spoke about beautiful, I spoke about good. In my sentence which uses a positive degree adjective, I will be using that same root word only. And if I have to say, there is the speech was so good as to be remembered by all. So I have used the positive form or positive degree of the adjective good. Similarly, here I have used thin. You will notice I have put an underline on two words here, so good as thin as. So when you are talking about comparisons, obviously you have to compare it with someone. How do you make a comparison? By using either of these two formats, either say so good as something or as good as something. Similarly, so thin as something or as thin as something. So these two words are a must when you are talking about degrees in the positive degree sentence. Now the same sentence, if we are enabling a comparison, we are not using the root word, we are using the comparative word, then it becomes, instead of good, I would have to write it as better than. Similarly, as thin as could have been written in the form of thinner than. So what did you notice which is common in the comparative sentences? Comparatively sentences would always have the word than after the adjective. This is the adjective. Better, that is the comparative form. And after better you have than, after thin you have than. Coming to the third kind of degree, that is the superlative. That nothing can go beyond that. He's the thinnest, he's the fattest, he's the most, she's the most beautiful, that is the best. So we are talking about nothing more than that can actually exist. So that's the highest degree. So if I have so good as, better than, and then it would be the best. Similarly, the thinnest. So this is how we have different degrees of comparison. I will just tell you a little bit on how a root word can be transformed into a comparative, into a superlative, depending upon the structure of the word. So the table here shows 3 degrees of comparison: positive, comparative, and superlative. Now, if the root word is monosyllabic, monosyllabic means like you have syllables. Like if I have to talk about a name Sucheta, there's Sucheta, there are 3 syllables. But if I talk about a word which is fat, there's just one syllable, that is fat, a. So if it is a single syllable word, like you would be having in the adjectives of quality, tall, fat. Tall has one syllable, fat has one syllable. You are going to use this rule that you're going to ER, you are going to add ER, and there's another condition to it. If it is a single vowel adjective. Now here, can you see how many adjectives are here in this place? Sorry, how many vowels are here? There's only one vowel A, one vowel A. So if there's a single vowel, the last consonant is doubled. So tall, as it is, has 2 vowels, it becomes taller. Fat has a single vowel, it becomes fatter. And if I had another one, say thin, what do you think it would have become? It would have become, since it's a single vowel, single syllable word, I would have to repeat my last vowel, last consonant here, and it would become thinner. Is that okay? So this here would, when I come to the superlatives, instead of adding ER, I add EST, so it becomes tallest, fattest, thinnest. Why have we doubled the consonants at the back? I've just told you, because all of them were single vowel, single syllable words. Now, I'm just going to go to the third one here. Now, look at the third one here. All of them, how many vowels do they have? E, A. But mean is again a single syllable word, but it has 2 vowels. In that case, I'm not going to double the consonant at the back. I will just add an ER. So you're going to only add ER if it is a double vowel word. And remember, what are we talking about? We are talking about monosyllabic words. So in that case, it becomes mean plus ER. Meaner. Fair again has 2 vowels, A and I, but the syllable is single, fair. So how do you get it? You get it by adding an ER and becomes fairer. Similarly, you're not going to double the last consonant here. It's going to become meanest and fairest without doubling the last consonant. So that was when we're talking about monosyllabic words and where it is a single vowel word or a double vowel word. Now there are quite a few other adjectives which end in Y. Like you have merry, you have pretty. So what do you do with that? You remove that Y in the end. Merry, the spelling is MERRY. You remove the Y and in place of the Y put an I. So, merrier, prettier. The Y has gone. You've replaced it with I and still added your ER. Similarly here, you've replaced the Y with the I and still added your EST. So, merriest, prettiest. Is that okay? How you deal with monosyllable words? So, next we will now talk about polysyllabic words, right? So now we come to the polysyllabic words. Polysyllabic. Poly as a word means many, many syllable words. Beautiful, 3 syllables. Thoughtful, 3 syllables. In that case, we do not add ER at the end and make it beautifuler or thoughtfuler. We prefix more. That is, we put it before the word and it becomes more beautiful, more thoughtful. Similarly, the superlative is obtained again by prefixing most, and so that becomes most beautiful and most thoughtful. So, what is this for? This is mainly for polysyllabic words which have more than one syllable. Now, coming to the next, we have some exceptions. Always there are exceptions. Like in the class, there are some naughty ones. So, in grammar also we have some exceptions. So, if I have this word good here, if this is written here, I don't have more good, I don't have gooder, the better, the comparative then becomes better, and this becomes best. And I'm sure all of you would be knowing about it, but sometimes just skips your mind. Bad again is not badder and baddest, it is worse and sorry, this was to be in the this is bad, this is worse, and this is worst. Similarly, far. Now, far has two treatments. Far can be in terms of physical absolute distance, so that becomes farther. Farther. And what did I say? Farther is that is absolute distance. If I have to give you an example, her house is farther than mine. Oh, okay. Now, if I have to now talk about uh, the relative distance, that becomes further. So, that is relative distance or more as a position. I will then use the adjective further instead of farther. Is that okay? So, if I say she stays further away than her mother. So, I am comparing it with her mother's house, the distance of her house. Similarly, here it would be the farthest and here it will be the furthest. Is that okay? You also have something like less here. Less becomes lesser and least. So, it is not lessest, it becomes least. So, there are some exceptions which you will get to know with practice. Now, we move on towards the basic transformation of sentences. Okay. So, beginning with the actual transformation of sentences, where without changing the meaning of the sentence, we have to change between the positive, the comparative, and later on also between the superlative. So, I'll start with an example, and from the example, then we'll try and set the rules out. The first one, very simple. Harish is not as tall as Sohan. Two subjects. Harish is the first subject. He is not as tall as Sohan. Subject 2. As we can understand from here, Harish is shorter to Sohan. So, Sohan is taller than Harish. So, this actually gives you the comparative. Sohan is taller than Harish. Sohan is taller than Harish. Sometimes you may have to look at it diagrammatically, not a problem. You can have a look at it like that also. But let's have a look at the rules. What happened? Harish, who was subject 1, has gone here. Sohan, who was subject 2, has come in the front. And I had removed the not. So, Sohan is taller than Harish. So, I've interchanged the places of the subject 1 and the subject 2. And also, this earlier with the not was a negative sentence. Any sentence which has a not or a never becomes a negative sentence. And when you're removing it, it becomes a positive sentence. So, let's just have a look at the rules. On transforming positive degree sentences, S1 and S2 interchange places. S1 and S2 interchange places. The second rule, a negative sentence which is either with a not or a never will become a positive sentence. So, it was a negative sentence, it will become a positive sentence, and if had it been a positive sentence, it would have become a negative sentence. Now, that having been said, now there are only two people who are being compared, Harish and Sohan. Can I write a superlative? Harish is the tallest of Sohan and Harish. That sounds a little vague, and so we generally do not write a superlative when there is a comparison only between two subjects. So there is no superlative degree for comparison between only two subjects. Okay, so my three rules: S1 and S2 interchange places, a negative sentence becomes a positive, no superlative when only two subjects are being compared. Let's have a look at example 2. It is a kind of a similar sentence. Harish is not as tall as Soham and Rajesh. So Soham is also here and Rajesh is also here. So can you understand that both these boys are taller than Harish? So let's try and write a sentence meaning that Sohan and Rajesh are taller than Harish. So this was a comparative. Now there are three subjects here. I just told you that generally we do not prefer a superlative for two subjects, but there are three. So let's see how we can write this. Harish is, can you see, is the shortest of Sohan, Rajesh, and Harish. So this is what we are going to be writing. Out of the three boys, who's the shortest? Harish. And I've used the superlative when I am using shortest. Though in this case, I have had to change my adjective. From tall, I have made it taller, shortest. So Harish is the shortest of the three boys, Sohan, Rajesh, and Harish. So I've given you an example where there were only two subjects. I've given you an example where there were three subjects. So in the first two examples, we saw that we had taken either two subjects, like the first one was Harish and Sohan, and the other example was where we had taken three subjects. Now we are going to be taking it as a group, and then we are talking about one subject amongst the entire group. So if I look at this, the cake is the sweetest of all deserts. So the deserts, all the deserts together form a group, and one out of them, that is the cake, is the sweetest of all of them. So you can see for the superlative, I used the word the. If I then have to say that it's sweeter than all the other deserts, so the cake is sweeter than all other deserts. And for using the comparative degree, my word than appears in the sentence. Now I want to say that the cake is sweet, but then all other deserts are less than that. So what am I going to say? No other desert is as sweet as the cake. In the positive sentence, you will notice the use of as on either side of the adjective. So this is how you transform the S1, S2 in the superlative, S1, S2 in the comparative have changed places. When I brought it to the positive, the S2 has come forward, the S1 has gone at the back. It was earlier a positive sentence because there was no use of not or never in the sentence. If you look at the superlative, there is no, there is no not. But the moment you transform it into a positive, there is the use of no. So with that, these two positive sentences in terms of the use of no and not become a negative sentence. Please don't confuse. Here, when I write positive, this is basically talking about positive degree. It is not positive in the sense of positive and negative with the use of no and not, right? Another interesting thing is when there is a not in the sentences. If there is a not, there is going to be a different methodology for transformation. Now let's just see this. Tom is not the most intelligent person here. That means, what am I trying to say? That there are other people in the group who are more intelligent than Tom. So I say Tom is not the most. This is the superlative form. And when I say most, I prefix it with the. So Tom is not the most intelligent person here. When I transform into comparative, Tom, the subject one, is still going to remain in the front. And I will then write, Tom is not more intelligent than all the people here. Some of them are still more intelligent. We are talking about he not being more intelligent than all of them. There are some who are above Tom and there are some who are below Tom. Now coming to the third, when you are converting it into positive. Since it was a negative sentence earlier, because of the use of not, it is now going to become positive in the sense of no and not, and I'm going to get my subject to in the front, and then I will say, instead of all the people, I'm going to write some of the people here are as intelligent as Tom. So some are to the level of Tom, but there are some others who are above Tom. So have you understood? This was in a group. When I'm using not, I'm trying to say that he is not the most intelligent person. There are some people who are above him, some people who are below him. So when I write it as a comparative, it becomes he's not more intelligent than all of them. There are some above him, and then some of the people are as intelligent as Tom, saying that there are some who are even more intelligent than Tom. Is that okay? So have you understood the use of not? A similar example I am taking as example 2 in the case of use of not. This is not the best restaurant in town. When I say that, am I trying to say that it is the best? Am I trying to say that it is the worst? No. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm not saying it's the worst. It's somewhere in between. There are some restaurants which are better than this. There are some restaurants which are not as good as this. So, when I say this is not the best, you can understand this is in the superlative degree prefixed with the. When I'm transforming this into comparative, the subject one will still remain in the front. This is not. Instead of best, use the comparative degree better than all the restaurants in town. That means there are some which are still better than this particular restaurant. Is that okay? So I have not changed the meaning, but I have changed it from the superlative into the comparative, transformed the superlative degree best into the comparative degree better. Instead of the for the superlative degree, I use than for the comparative degree. Mind you, when I was transforming from superlative to comparative, I did not change the placement of S1 and S2. Coming to the third, when I am transforming these into positive, when I transform any of the superlative or comparative into positive, I need to interchange the places of subject 1 and subject 2. So, the restaurants in town come in the front and this goes at the back. What is the positive of best, better? It is good. So, some of the restaurants in town are as good as this, whereas some of them are worse than this. Is that okay? So, I've been able to get the same meaning, but without like using different forms of the adjectives. Please keep in mind when you have not here, this will transform into some here. Is that okay? Then we move ahead to a slight recap of what we've done in the entire topic. So, a quick recap of what we've learned today. When we are transforming a sentence from a positive degree to a comparative and a superlative, this is what we've done. In the positive degree sentences, the format which you will notice will be so as adjective as followed by some other words. Like if I say she is so tall as, so, or she is as thin as, so it's the root form of the adjective and prefix is so or as, and at the end comes an I. When you're looking at the comparative degree of the sentence, you will have the comparative form of the adjective followed by than. So if I have to write good, the comparative form is better. So better than, similarly fatter than, more beautiful than, and this is how it goes. In the superlative degree, the format that you will find is the, and if you have to take an example, the fattest, the most intelligent, the most careful. So you have the before the superlative form of the adjective. So these are how the sentences will look. Now if we look at the transformations, as I've already told you, there can be no superlative when only two subjects are being compared, because I can only have a comparison between two people. I cannot say who's best in two people. I can only say who's better. So, I cannot have a superlative when only two subjects are being compared. The third thing that I spoke to you about was when you're transforming a positive degree sentence into a comparative or a superlative degree sentence, there are two things that are going to happen. The position and the placement of subject 1 and subject 2 are going to get interchanged. So suppose I say Harish is as tall as Sohan. I will then be saying Sohan is, sorry, if I say Harish is not as tall as Sohan, I will be saying that Sohan is taller than Harish. So I have interchanged the places of Harish and Sohan. And the other thing that will happen is that if the positive degree sentence is negative in nature, in the sense it has a not or a never, the superlative and the comparative will become positive sentences. Like I just told you, Harish is not as tall as Sohan. So Sohan is taller than Harish. The not has disappeared from the comparative or the superlative sentence. The third thing here was that all these three rules will slightly change if there is a not. In that case, we would sometimes be having to use some, as I explained to you in the previous slide. Now, I have, as of now, in this particular lecture, touched upon those particular superlative and comparative cases where it is a mutually exclusive sentence. Like if I say, he is the tallest, he is exclusive to the rest. I don't have him as a part of the rest. I may have such sentences where the situation does not talk about a mutually exclusive one. Like, look at this one. Mumbai is one of the largest ports in India. I'm not saying it is the largest port in India. I'm saying it is one of the largest ports in India. So, along with Mumbai, there are a few other such ports. So, in such a case, you will have a different treatment when you have to convert it into a comparative. If you can see this, because of the fact that it is the largest, as of now the sentence is in the superlative degree, but not mutually exclusive. When you need to convert it into a comparative one, we will have to try a different methodology that you will have to get back to me in the next lecture, or you can get back to me through my classes, LearnMate classes. The phone numbers are very well written on the board, and otherwise also through my channel you can get my phone numbers. Thank you and have a good day.